in Society, we have a look at the relationship between politics and journalism, especially during elections, and whether journalists have the freedom to work impartially. Good morning. A very good morning and welcome to Media in Society. I'm your host, Alicia Ntlantla Jali. Now, this is a show where we take a look at the intersection between the media as well as you, the society. Now, this show, of course, would not be complete without your valuable input. So do give us a call on 011 714 0661, alternatively 714 0662, or use X using the hashtag SABC Media in Society. All right, well, before today's topic, we're going to take you live to the Moses Mabhida Stadium. As you know, the IFP is holding its manifesto launch. Scores are expected to flock to the Moses Mabhida Stadium to hear the leadership in terms of what they have for South Africans as we head to the May 29th poll. Throughout the course of today, we will also be taking a lot of analysis around the IFP manifesto. A lot of speculation is rife as to how the party is actually going to fare after, of course, the passing of its founder, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. We do have our journalists as well as our team on the ground, and Sakina Kamwendo, SABC News reporter, is standing by in Durban. Sakina, a very good morning to you. How are preparations coming along as, of course, we await the manifesto launch of the IFP today?
Well, a very good morning and welcome back to Moses Mabhida Stadium once more. It is election season and it is the fifth of the big five by means of numbers in terms of how they fared and representation in Parliament. The Inkatha Freedom Party, it is their turn for their election manifesto, the last of the big five. We were here for the EFF here at Moses Mabhida, and then the DA took us to the nation's capital in Pretoria. We came back to Moses Mabhida for the ANC, went back to the capital for the Freedom Front Plus, and now it's back to Moses Mabhida. And I'm joined, as I have been throughout the session, by Mzwai Mbeje and Dr. Ranesh Doraj, who are, of course, the SABC's political head and research heads independently, respectively. So, gentlemen, good to have you with us once more. And yeah, election season, the filling up of the stadium is what we're going to be keeping our eyes on, but it's the turn of Inkatha.
Absolutely. A very good morning to you, Sakina, and the viewers, and Doc. Indeed, and we were just looking at the stadium because they forced us to come to Moses Mabhida, so we can't run away from stadiumology because somehow we will compare what's happening. But of course, it's the content of the speech that's going to be determining exactly where this party is going. So we are going to hear Hlabisa speak here. Interestingly, he is part of the multi-party charter. I actually want to hear if there will be any mention of that multi-party charter, given that the elections are fast approaching. Indeed.
Dr. Ranesh, of course, the first time that Inkatha Freedom Party will be going into an election without Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who is, of course, now late passed away in September last year. How is that going to impact the fortunes of the party, do you think?
I think it will have an impact on the party in these elections because remember, he was a very powerful, potent force within the Inkatha Freedom Party. He started the movement back in 1975. Obviously, there was a conference held in 2019. There was a change, there was signs that, leadership needed to change, the movement needed to change, the IFP needed to change with the times. So that's why he stepped down. And then obviously at that conference in 2019, Velenkosi Hlabisa was elected the president. But Sakina, very, very importantly, if you look at the stadium today, there's a huge banner of the late president, former president of the IFP, Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And I deeply suspect that his face will be on the ballot paper as well, just to remind people, just to draw people, not to confuse people, that that this is the IFP of Buthelezi as well, because Velenkosi Shlabisa, he seems like a nice guy, but in terms of charisma, in terms of pull, electoral pull, I don't think he's on that same level as Buthelezi was. So that's the reason probably Buthelezi's picture will be on that, will be on the ballot paper just to draw people in, because the IFP does have its support. Most of its support is here in KZN. 90% of that support emanates from KZN, and obviously around 9% from Gauteng, and the remaining 1% from across the country. In the last election, the 2019 elections, the IFP increased their vote share in 3 places. Nationally, obviously, KZN, and the other one was Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Sorry, 3 provinces in Mpumalanga. Just a slight increase, but that's where the thrust of IFP support is. In this election, I somehow feel they will increase, but not as much. Maybe the death of the former IFP president will harm the party, but I think now, with the ANC on the backslide as well, nationally and in KZN, the IFP might do a little better, but the NFP, the National Freedom Party, has been self-imploding since the 2016 local government election, and obviously 2019 as well, and I think that will benefit the IFP on May 29th this year.
And that's going to be interesting because KZN is going to be a battleground. The entry, as you say, of MKP. And I think, though, if we are looking at those electoral fortunes, since the breakaway from the IFP of Ziba Gianni and Nadeko, and NFP, as you say, Kamakwaza Msibi, they are now on the decline. And it would seem as though from the local government election showing that the IFP was clawing back some of that support. But again, with all the developments locally, especially in this province, which is a stronghold for the IFP, they also do show in Gauteng, parts of Gauteng, especially around the East Rand. But elsewhere, where would the party be looking to actually gain support? Where would they be looking to grow, if at all, Mzwai?
I mean, given their ambitions, and I think they need to start spreading across the country. Actually, we have seen in the past few weeks, Sakina, the leadership of the IFP visiting Northwest, visiting Limpopo, which does tell you that they realize that focusing on KZN and perhaps Gauteng so alone doesn't help, especially with the new entrants, which are actually eating into that base. So I have seen that they are starting to make their presence felt in provinces like Northwest and Limpopo. Obviously, in terms of response of the people, it's a different matter altogether.
I was going to ask about that, because how difficult a task is that for a party that has been seen as one that has a Zulu nationalist facade, so to speak?
I think that's where the challenge of the leadership of the IFP is. And I don't know how much this will help the IFP, because after the election, Sakina and Doc, in August, they are expected to go to their own election. So given that Buthelezi, as much as he was such a powerful figure, but there was a very big association of him with the Zulu-related stuff. I mean, he was the traditional Zulu prime minister. So that will always be in the minds of the people outside of this province. So you have someone now who is not somehow linked to that. So how is he or she able to then exploit the fact that, yes, I may happen to come from KwaZulu-Natal, but I'm more of a national figure. So, especially because I suspect that they will have their own internal challenges beyond May, going towards August. So what exactly is going to determine? And then whatever leadership will come out of there, so we'll see if they are able then to spread across with the kind of credibility that you see, for example, in other parties. Because right now, as much as the IFP is seen as a party that perhaps could assist in terms of the national realignment, but it's still being viewed as a provincially based party.
Interesting, that one. We have, of course, reporters fanned out across the stadium here and the precinct. So we're going to cross now to Natasha Puri to find out where she's at and, of course, who she's with. And then we'll come back and continue the conversation here at the makeshift studio here at Moses Mabhida with Dr. Ronesh Doraj and Mzwai Mbeche. Natasha, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Sakina. I'm at the heart of the stadium, actually, by the pitch. Unfortunately, it's quite loud because the program has started, and of course, there's entertainment there on the stage. But let's just look at the performance of the IFP outside the province of KZN. We know that in the last elections, they got over 30,000 or 38,000 of the share of votes in a province like Gauteng, and we know that Gauteng actually has 6 million registered voters, and the hope for the party is that they actually increase their votes in Gauteng. But joining me right now, I'm joined by the Gauteng chairperson of the IFP, Mr. Bonkosi Dlamini. Thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. Mr. Dlamini, in the last elections, the IFP got over 38,000 of the share of votes in the province of Gauteng. What is your expectation this time around?
Oh, well, as the IFP in Gauteng, we are growing as a party. You know that in the 2021 local government elections, we snatched 2 wards away from the ruling party, and we increased our numbers, and we have even representation in Tshwane and the West Rand. Therefore, the IFP is on a very growing strategy in Gauteng. This time, we are hoping to go back what we had in 1994.
And what is your strategy? How do you hope to actually woo voters to actually vote for the IFP in a province like Gauteng?
Well, when you look at the statistics of our branches, the majority of our branches are in the townships and suburbs. We are no more a hostel-based political party. I, for one, am born, bred and battered in Soweto. Therefore, the IFP is the party for everyone. And it's important that we say to South Africans, the stronger the IFP, the better for their stability and growth in Gauteng. In 2019, when we had the government of local unit in Johannesburg, where the IFP was part of it, there was stability, there was service delivery, and there was clean governance. Therefore, the stronger the IFP in Gauteng and other provinces, the better for South Africans themselves.
And let's talk about the numbers. What numbers are we looking at? What are your targets for Gauteng?
No, our target, as I said to you, is to go back what we had in Gauteng in 1994.
Outside of the multi-party charter and the political parties that are there, which other parties do you seek to talk to after the elections, especially in a province like Gauteng?
No. There is no. The multi-charter is a discussion of like-minded parties to say what are the possibilities of reducing the ANC to 50%. But here we are going to elections as individual parties, and as the IFP will not close the door. We respect the voters to say what they will say. And as Gauteng, we've been even given that license to say, Gauteng, you are unique, you must look at what works for some people of Gauteng. Therefore, who will work with after the elections will be determined by the voters.
And let's just look at your manifesto. I mean, what commitments do you have for the people of Gauteng? We know that, we've got challenges of water in Gauteng. Load shedding is a problem. Crime is a problem. What can the IFP do for the people of Gauteng?
Let me not bust the bubble of the president and tell you what is going to happen, but I can assure Gautengers that listen to the president today and also listen to me on the 24th of March when we unleash our provincial manifesto. But today, the president will be speaking to those issues that are really worrying our people.
Mr. David, thank you so much. I understand that my colleague, Simphiwe Makanya, is actually joined by IFP supporters. Simphiwe, over to you.
Thank you very much there to my colleague Natasha Piri, who has been, engaging with some of the party members as well as leaders of the IFP on the ground. We are here at the stands of the Moses Mabhida Stadium, and I'm now going to ask Umama Ushabangu to engage with us. Ma, thank you very much for joining us. Asibonge kakhulu mangesikhathi sakho. Sike sakhuluma ngaphambilini wangichazela ukuthi uqhamuka kuphi nokuthi uzokwenzani la. Ngicela ungiphindele ungichazele ukuthi wena njengomuntu osupporta iqembu leInkatha Freedom Party yini ozoyenza la, yini oyilindele ukuzwa umholi wenu mayisekhuluma.
Ngicela ukuthi akhulume ngendaba
Okay, we seem to have a problem with Umama here. She's a bit shy. Let's try and engage this gentleman over here. Ntumba, siyabonga baba ngesikhathi sakho. Sicela ungichazele baba ukuthi uqhamukaphi nokuthi inhlosoni njengoba uze la yini oyilindele ukuzoyizwa.
uSamuel waKhumalo qhamuka eBaquluzini. Yebo lapha silindele size ukuzolalela umholi wethu eqembu lekade. Asithi izinto azositshela ngazo kwi-manifesto yethu ukuthi-ke ngempela esikulindele laphayana ukuthi yini ezosinikeza yona mayelana nokuthuthukisa komnotho eSouth Africa makwenzeka ephatha. Phinde futhi-ke angayinciphisa kanjani i-load shedding ngoba i-load shedding iyona lena eqeda amathuba omsebenzi. Aphinde futhi-ke angayenza kanjani ukuthi imfundo ibe sezingeni eliphezulu. Yilokho-ke mfundo esikulindeleyo.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll continue to monitor the developments here and engage with even more supporters of the IFP who have come out in their numbers to hear what the party has to offer. And one of the points raised by Mr. Khumalo here is the issue of addressing youth unemployment, the issue of addressing the country's sluggish economy, as well as addressing the issue of load shedding. It's back to you in Johannesburg for now.
Moses Mabhida Stadium, and of course Dr. Ranesh Doraj eagerly awaiting what the IFP will have to say and how this will differ, if at all, from the previous manifesto statement that was launched by the party. But just a quick look at what's happening outside the stadium precinct here, and this is of course just below where our studio is, and this is the arrival. We're trying to see who is actually arriving at the stadium at this point, and I must tell you, lots of security around all of the leaders of the IFP. I would imagine as we speak over these pictures, Dr. Ranesh and Mzwai, this is something that of course goes hand in glove with the security situation around politicians in KwaZulu-Natal. This is the province, Dr. Ranesh, where we see a lot of political killings.
Absolutely, Sakina. Yeah, it is a very volatile province.
So it is Reverend Buthelezi who is arriving, and you can see there. So as we said, a lot of security given the political killings around this part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely, Sakina. So as I was saying, especially around election time, those political killings see an uptake. There is normally a huge spike. Obviously, these elections, lots at stake. We've got the entry of the MK party, a couple of new players as well. If you look at the electoral landscape of KZN as well, there are 5 main players. One's the ANC, the second is the IFP, the National Freedom Party, the DA, and obviously since 2014, we've had the Economic Freedom Fighters entering the scene. And then in this election, we just saw a couple of days ago, Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane Zuma, all game changers, AGC. He's also thrown his hat into the ring here in KZN, as well as obviously the party, the MK party, Umkhonto weSizwe party. So those are going to be the main players, and obviously it's going to be a very charged electoral landscape because everyone knows that the ANC is on the back foot in this province. A very important province in terms of registered voters, 5.7 million voters, just registered voters rather. Just behind Gauteng, 21%, Gauteng's around 24%. So any party, any successful party that wants to do very well in any election, notably in this election, will have to do very well in Gauteng, in KZN, just to buoy that overall national total at the end of the election. So that's the importance of this election. Obviously, if you look at the history of political killings in this country, most of them actually happen here, happen in KZN, parts of Gauteng, parts of Mpumalanga, a couple here in Northern Cape and the Western Cape as well. So I think, it's going to be very heightened security as political parties start to campaign. This is a province also known, in the past for political intolerance. So I think police and the security services will be on high alert, leading up to May 29.
Speaking of Reverend Buthelezi, a lot happening around the throne as well. And since the passing of Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the role of the traditional Prime Minister to the King has also been quite interesting to watch how this is unfold.
Absolutely, and because actually I see that it's the chairperson of the province that is also arriving. But I think the very important question there, and we know, Sakina, that there are actually people who are not necessarily happy with his appointment, because there are also there's also talk that his head maybe what he has thrown his head into the ring for the leadership of the IFP. We've just spoken about the August election that is coming up. I mean, someone like SABC, who is the president currently,
who has just arrived. There you see the leader of the IFP, Velenkosini SABC,
yes.
Being welcomed there by the national spokesperson, Kuleko Tlengwa. We have the MP Naren Singh also there in attendance. So all of them, we can see the leadership now moving into the stadium.
And you can see they are showing a united face there, because they are mixed up with the provincial leadership as well. So to perhaps try and project that unity that they've been speaking about. But to the point that we were speaking about in terms of the security, you know, in this province, even the councillors in some municipalities have to be guarded, because you can't take a risk. Just imagine when it relates to the leaders, so the stakes get even higher. So it's something that I guess as a country politically perhaps we'll have to try and deal with and get the ordinary people to understand what is politics. Politics is not always about fighting, but it's about fighting with ideas, because when all is said and done, you want to improve the lives of people, not to destroy the lives of people, quite literal in this instance.
Indeed. And of course, that's where we're going to leave it for now. We're going to hand you back to studio as we see the arrival of the leadership of the Inkatha Freedom Party here at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. And I can tell you that the supporters are also streaming in their numbers. It is filling up quite nicely. Some segments, the ones in the shade most notably, already filling up. And we'll see how this goes, because as Mzwai says, stadiumology has become part and parcel of the commentary, given the show of force that this presents. But for now, it's back to studio.
Thank you so much to Sakina Kamwendo there, Dr. Ronesh Doraj, alongside political editor Mzwandile Mbeje, all at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Stay tuned to SABC News for more analysis on that IFP manifesto launch. For now, though, Media and Society is going to go on a small break, and then we're going to really start talking. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Media and Society. Now, journalism is vital for democratic integrity, ensuring transparency in elections by providing voters with reliable information. However, during elections, political factions aim to shape narratives, leading to intense interactions between journalists as well as the political parties. Now, this prompts questions about the relationship between journalists and political entities. Do journalists have the freedom to work impartially? Can they address key issues openly? Well, these inquiries shed light on the intricate dynamics that are shaping democratic discourse. And joining us now is Dr. Prinola Govender, the senior lecturer at the Department of Communication and Media at the University of Johannesburg. Business Live journalist Mr. Semu Mkokeli, as well as Mr. Magic Nkwashu, who is an independent political analyst as well as a human rights activist. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Sam, I want to know from you, what do you think should be the role of journalism in shaping democratic processes, particularly during election time?
Look, there's various legs to the answer. The primary one is availing information to the public so that the public is informed. Also public accountability. holding those that are in power, not necessarily in power in the form of a ruling party, but holding politicians accountable, all the players, the IEC itself, shining a spotlight to various processes. That's the primary role of the media, is really helping empower South Africans, not just the voters. It's about the investment infrastructure. Fund managers they play quite a role in the election, so they need to have proper information at the right time.
Doctor, I mean, looking at the current relationship between the political parties and journalists, particularly as we head towards elections, a political leader might not like what a journalist has written about the party, and then it's all systems go. It's going to be an all-out tour on the social media aspect of things. They're going to be tweeting and retweeting. You know, it's going to be a back and forth. What do you make of that type of relationship? It's quite volatile, right?
Oh, absolutely, Alicia, and good morning to you and the viewers. So what I would like us to do is just to locate this discussion about elections to broader South African society and locate it to our history, because actually the ANC has said, if you want to look at the role the media plays in South Africa, you've got to look at its past.
Absolutely.
So traditionally, the media played a very, very political role. If you have to look during colonialism, it was our very first newspaper group was born in Sin. As one of these famous authors said, in John Mattison said in God's Spies and Lies, it was Cecile John Rhodes acting at the back end, funding the Cape Argus, which is now owned by independent media, for his imperial dream of a Southern African region under the imperial flag. Then we look at apartheid. A lot of academics have said that our mainstream media reflected the political divides of prevalent society. For example, newspapers. The English press were more sympathetic to our black majority and the opposition. Then the Afrikaner press was more sympathetic, obviously, to the Afrikaner national government. And then at the advent of democracy, one of the main changes was a very conflicting relationship between the ANC and between the media. And even if we look at before elections, which is a lot of what my research has looked at, I looked at the transformation role of the media in the first 20 years of democracy. I analyzed looking at 6 newspapers, and there you really see the politicized role of the media. Even outside of elections, our newspapers are dubbed the official opposition. And then if you look at the SABC, it's really been a mouthpiece for whatever party was in power. So I find it interesting as a lecturer. Wherever I've lectured, at Wits, at University of Johannesburg, you ask any student, first year class, honors class, they will unfortunately say the SABC is government owned, because when Thabo Mbeki was in power, there was a blacklist, and allegedly those that are critical of him were not aired. Zuma was in power. Then there was a song that was banned from being played because it was in. Do you know what I'm saying? And now it's this. So you see basically this political divides outside of elections manifest itself, and then you see this conflicting relationship come out during elections.
Your observations, Babu Magic?
Yeah, indeed. They usually say so in Africa. So media is going to be vital in these elections. It has been, and obviously media is expected to not take sides, to be neutral, and really push our democracy as per our constitution.
But are they being allowed and given the space to be impartial and do their work freely without, with being impartial?
That's a challenge, because we do have institutions that are guiding how media should be reporting. But when you look at our politics at the moment, even the current amendments bill that are going through Parliament, it's more like trying to gag how the media has been reporting, particularly when you look at the public broadcast. So it's important for our democracy to continue growing, that the media should be given space, especially since it operates in volatile. You know that we're saying that this election is going to be our 1994.
Yes.
Almost everyone is trying to look at how the political parties are going to fare. We've got new entrants, and we've got those who want to remain in power, and especially with all the parties looking at putting ANC below 50%.
Sam, talk to us about the current challenges that are inherent in the sector, particularly with journalists and the political parties.
The first one is the political economy of the media. Really difficulties from the commercial side of things. If anyone has watched the size of especially the print media, go back to 1994 to today, it's really shrunk quite considerably. But there are new avenues, the citizen journalism, which brings about faster, unfiltered information, but it also has got the downside to it, in that it's not governed by in terms of the ethics code, journalism code, but also the experience. I mean, the citizen journalist might not have they might mean well, but will not have stick to the rules or the experience to deliver anything. So the media has got serious commercial problems that it's not able to tell the stories as it did in a couple of elections ago. But also the other one is the terrain itself is quite hostile to journalists. Not just journalists alone, it's the nature of the beast. If you look at political violence, it's one of the risks going into this election. So journalists get affected by that because they are part of the elections ecosystem. That's one of the interesting things. But the other one is bullying. Social media bullying, journalists get quite bullied easily. But you also want to flip that around. Now when we talk, we use the language in South Africa that people must be given space and things like that. Journalists are not the kind of people who are powerless. They have a lot of power, so they shouldn't even be asking for space. They can't be given space. They must claim the space. The space is there. They must be forceful about protecting their space and pushing back against bullies, especially when these bullies have names, the politicians. If a particular leader says this on social media, I mean, journalists shouldn't really cower and say, hey, we are being attacked here. They have just to have a thicker skin and push through. It's a tough job, but you're already in it and you've asked to do it, and that's what you have to do.
Just, grin and bear it. Look, Doctor, let's talk about the journalistic responsibilities, right? How do then members of the public gauge the credibility as well as reliability of news sources when consuming certain information?
Yeah, I mean, so I also just want to unpack a bit of, pull from Sam's point, if you would allow me that. It's interesting, according to the latest World Freedom Rankings, we actually, our media is actually regarded quite free. But you really need to unpack that. And he mentioned the political economy of the media. So yes, according to our constitution, we have freedom of expression enshrined, which then filters to the role of the media. We have a very liberal democracy that allows us certain freedoms. We're not like other African countries, but then we really have to ask ourselves, and you mentioned it as well, the structure and the political economy of the media. So economy is a huge thing.
True.
Because in 1994, we switched from a system of racial capitalism to the neoliberalism, and Winnie Mandela in that controversial democracy said the ANC had over-negotiated into neoliberal democracy. So journalists are always going to operate within the political context, which is now traditionally the media played a political role. You're either on one side of the allegiance or you're on another side. And then neoliberalism, I've written a paper looking at the power of neoliberalism in South Africa, that despite our black economic empowerment and transformation and all these changes and policy changes we've done to the media, like we now need to be objective, neoliberalism and commercialism is actually the biggest factor. So therefore, when I switch on the TV, when I listen to the radio, without mentioning any specific media houses, they're all kind of piggybacking off the same thing. I know where ANC Youth League is. They're in Soweto. No, they're in Alexander, launching a manifesto on unemployment. We all know where the IFP is this morning. We know that ANC is in Nkululeni. So what happens is it's very events-based. There's a binary of this political party, the IFP elections manifesto. One of the radio stations says they're launching this. The aim is they're taking away ANC votes. But when I was early in my career, I worked for Media Monitoring Africa, and William Bird's been an expert here. And on that specific project where we monitored elections coverage back in 2009, we found that yes, our media is fair and balanced. However, we do not unpack rigorous issues enough. So that is going to affect. So it's all about this party versus that party. It's events-based, and that's because of the commercialism and the neoliberalism of the media.
Very interesting point there, Doctor. Magic, let's talk about then the media influence during elections. I mean, how influential is media and the information that they give give out or dish out to the voters or potential voters during election time?
Media is very crucial because for a voter out there who still need to consume
they rely
information,
solely
they
on
need
the
to
media,
know
yes.
particularly social media. That's where people are having proper access. You are on Facebook.
And that's been a topic on its own,
Indeed.
talking about regulation and all sorts of things.
True, yeah. So media will play a crucial role in really informing the potential voter in terms of the different political parties, what they offer, whether they are not just lying to the voter, because so obviously most of the things what politicians are saying at the present moment is to try and convince a potential voter in order to vote for them. So media plays a major role in terms of unwrapping all these manifestos which they are currently presenting all over. As we know that we are speaking now, the IFP is launching its manifesto. Other political parties have been launching throughout the weekend and even the previous week. So it is media which is reaching even the rural community of our country to inform them what are the offerings of the various political parties in order for a voter to know what choice to make at the ballot box.
Without being called a mouthpiece for a specific party, because those are the red tapes that we often have to navigate around.
Yeah, but also you're going to get the criticism, right?
Yeah.
Some people are not going to be happy with you. They will call you a mouthpiece for this. And, but I mean, it's part of the course. So just take it as it comes. But you want to do your job properly. You want to be fair. Also, the issue of neutrality, I mean, I think it's an ideological impossibility as well. So you want to give everyone a chance to have their say. And you want to deal with that in issues of rigor. You want to deal with these things a bit more rigorously than the media does most of the time.
Doctor, maybe you can also expand on that, but I also want to know from you then, what strategies do political entities employ to shape media narratives as well as influence public opinion during election cycles as well?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what political parties use throughout the year. So I think you have to know how the media operates in South Africa. And we do, and as my research has shown, when I looked at 6 newspapers and how they cover protests, socio-economic issues, black leadership, the white economic elite, what you'll find is across the newspapers, it's the same topics, same everything. So because since 1994 our media is located in the market, even the SABC being a public broadcaster, it relies on advertising, so it's commercialized. So how are political parties going to get our attention? It's going to be on the dramatic. It's going to be a press release maybe from the IFP saying, we're going to steal votes. It's really looking at the human interest sensational side, because that's how our media operates.
Oh, absolutely.
Which has then affected the rigor, which has then affected us from covering structural, deep socioeconomic news and issues since 1994.
But I mean, with that said, Doctor, I mean, talking about balanced reporting, how do you then ascertain this if it's just the same narrative from, 3 different publications?
I mean, because then they're all reporting on the same thing, which manifesto is being...
But most of the times, it looks like it's a copy and paste type of situation.
Yes, absolutely, because, I mean, as Sam has said, and a lot of research has been done on this, there's been a shrinking of funding in the media, so therefore there's juniorization, and people are competing now. We have the big 4 newspaper groups, we have private broadcasters, so you're all competing with that, because in order to survive, you need advertising and you need sustainability. So we can say, all right, we're a public broadcaster, we have a public mandate, our community broadcasters need to do this, but we have to be sustainable. So we do have to make it a bit spicy and a bit interesting.
Of course, we can't be getting our content from TikTok, right, sir?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can't. We do, unfortunately, but we shouldn't.
Sam, talk to us about that. I mean, the balance in reporting and making sure that you also, as a journalist, giving your objective view to some of the critical societal issues and particularly political issues that we're talking about today.
Okay, these are very hard things to balance. First, trying to achieve balance first, and then this issue of objectivity. And that's just a philosophical thing as well. I don't think it's possible. We're influenced by so many things in our background, in our ideology, and sometimes we're not even aware. So you get into a question of discussing unconscious bias. But you want people to be professional around what they do. If they're dealing with the economy, get yourself properly equipped with skills and passion around what you do first. And if you get a better grip on the topic that you're writing on, you've got a better chance of being rigorous and then balanced as well. If you're good in understanding the journalism, the flow and the processes, then they guide you towards balance. That you must, everybody's being spoken about must get a chance to put their side across.
You are not the story.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also, I mean, the question of you are not the story is also a cliche as well. South African journalism has a history that the good doctor has actually gone back to. When your sagas, when they were involved in the story, they were passionate, they were fighting colonialism and apartheid. They were involved in the story, but the cliche itself mustn't make us miss the point of the passion and the greater involvement and the cause that journalism is all about. Don't be the story in that the story is not just you, but put yourself, invest a bit more of yourself in the role, because it's a public job that you're doing. It's not just a professional thing that you get paid for. It changes lives, it's powerful, we want to deepen democracy. It's quite an
And it
instrument.
can also affect on your credibility, Sam, I suppose.
Absolutely. You get it wrong, and then your credibility, I mean, that for me is actually the first of everything you do. Without credibility, you won't be able to use the instrument well.
Magic, look, maybe talk to us about what you think are the factors that actually contribute to these tensions between journalists and political parties.
Obviously, for political parties, they need to get the platform in order to convince a potential voter to see things in their way. And whereas the journalist is supposed to be objective, they need to be impartial in how they cover. It's not usually in the way the politician will expect. So there will always be a tension in that sense. So, so politicians, they always take advantage when they see that there is a potential of media actually delivering their message. And when it's not done in their way and it doesn't reflect what they want to see, it will always make them to actually blame the journalist in terms of how they cover their story.
Talk to us about that, Doctor, and maybe the importance of why then journalists need to be apolitical in order to maintain that objectivity.
Yeah, I mean, such wonderful points here. I'll just unpack it further. What we teach our students in first year class is that, in a first year media studies or journalism class, is that the media is not a mirror on society. It is a reflection on society, and it reflects power dynamics. So what we teach them is objectivity can never be achieved, right? You are always going to cover something within a perspective, be it a woman covering a rape story, right? Be it somebody that grew up in poverty, now you're upset at certain political parties, right? However, there's certain things you can do to achieve it. Balance, you can give good sources, etc. But however, I just think that journalists are really limited because of the economic and political environment historically since 1994 that is at contestation between the ANC and between media. Like my research found in the first 20 years of democracy, whenever government, the ANC government is covered in the media, 40% is negative. So then they play a watchdog role, can you see? But then what about the other roles of the media? And I also want to add that the importance of the media. An election is won or lost in the media. And a few years ago, many years ago, even a decade ago, it was still a new concept, but they came up with a concept called mediated campaigns to kind of show the importance of the media. It's won or lost. Basically, that's the power of the media. Yeah.
Very interesting indeed. Sam, maybe at the back of that, let's also maybe just chime in on the role of media in holding those political parties, accountable.
Look, it's actually a commonly available strand of media thought around its role, public accountability.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. People get up and they go to a press conference.
Yeah.
They want to hold somebody accountable.
Yeah.
But then you've got a skills issue. I don't know if the media reflects society in this way. It also, it's a language you could even use that South Africa broadly has a skills problem, a skills deficit everywhere.
Yeah.
So that problem will actually manifest itself in the media. So we've got an education problem that we all have to deal with. And then this education problem plays itself out in various sectors of society. And then when the media doesn't have the skills in accounting and economics, so then the journalists might not have be empowered to deal with public finance and hold people properly accountable. So it's a very difficult thing to achieve. You might have the attitude that you are in power, you're supposed to answer to the public via me, but then the questions might not be as pointed as they could have been. So there is that problem that you're not able to execute the role of. But I don't know, Doc, if I would agree with you. I mean, you've got your research. I guess I can't argue. I can't argue research. I can't argue. No, we never make an argument against research.
You're too kind, Sam.
No, they can never. But I'm fascinated with that because from an anecdotal perspective. If the media was as good and people informed opinion in the vote, the ANC would have lost power in 1999 already. Because
That's interesting.
The media has been hostile on the ANC appropriately.
Yes.
And it could actually even get better, but the ANC is still in power 30 years later. I mean, it's anecdotal. Okay.
Very quickly, Doctor.
Actually, I mean, that's actually very true. So, wow, that's actually... Yeah, it's
a new perspective.
Yeah, it's a new perspective to consider. But well, then it's actually more of a discussion then about media influence. So what we do in research is we say there's 3 empirical ways to study the media: the production, the context, political economy. The content is what I looked at. They're very oppositional, very negative. So then it's interesting. We need to discuss then the influence of the media. Are they receiving these messages? And maybe people are now fighting back. It's more like reception theory, where people are like, actually, I'm skeptical of the media. Do we believe them? They're still a predominantly white privilege. It's a lot of continuity. So maybe it's an influence discussion. Very good point, Sam.
Also, the voting is quite astute as well.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, you two can have this discussion
very
after the show.
Sam.
I want closing remarks quickly from Magic. Magic, very quickly, what ethical considerations then should a journalist prioritize when reporting on these political events or interviewing party representatives very quickly?
As long as they don't take sides in terms of how they engage on the issues, they are independent. It doesn't matter what is their own point of view is. So the journalists are very crucial. I mean, media is the 4th estate.
Yeah.
It's a crucial sector in terms of ensuring that our democracy continue growing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. That is where we're going to leave it for this morning's discussion. Sorry for a very short show. That was Dr. Prinola Govender, Senior Lecturer at the University of Johannesburg, Business Life journalist Mr. Sam Mkokeli, as well as, of course, Magic Nkwashu, who is an independent political analyst. Thank you so much for watching our show, Media and Society. We hope that you will join us again at same time and place next week. Thank you so much. We will be having the rest of that IFP manifesto analysis throughout the day right here on SABC News. For myself, Alicia Ntlantla Jale, and the rest of the team, have yourself a great morning.